綱握りしめて
Hey guys, welcome back to the concession stand. This week we are talking about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, specifically parts 1 and 2.
Phantom Blood and
the Hamon duo, as everyone calls them everywhere.
the two that deal with Hamon, the only two.
And then next week we will, maybe next week, next episode.
We might be able to do next week because my work is not as super shitty as it was this last week's. Ugh.
Fair enough. We will talk about Stardust Crusaders and Diamond is Unbreakable, and then we won't go any further, and we won't go into the manga. We'll just talk about the ones that are animated.
Which is a shame, because I could say a lot.
I'm on part 6 right now. It's pretty good.
Man. Alright, I won't say any more. Continue.
Yeah, please. But yeah, so this week we're talking about which everybody hates, and Battle Tendency, which everybody likes.
Perfect. It's like the
Seems
duality.
To be the general consensus.
The duality of man. I'll just say before I get into the explanation of part 1, I don't hate part 1 as much as everyone does. I do recognize it as being maybe the roughest part to get into JoJo, though.
Yeah, I really hated it the first time I watched it, because obviously that's the first part, so it's the very first exposure to the world you get, and God, it was rough. It was really hard to get through.
It's very...
but now that I've seen all of it, I kind of look back on it a little bit more fondly.
The memes really help get you back into it. You're like, okay, you know what? Wasn't all bad. So let me start off then. I'll be doing Phantom Blood, as I've just said. So anyway, Phantom Blood begins with an ancient Aztec ritual where a man is putting blood on a stone mask, and he shoots it into his head, and he becomes immortal. That's kind of the opening of it. And then it goes to England in the 1880s, where a boy named Dio is being adopted into the Joestar family because Dio's dad faked like being helpful to the Joestars at one point. So because the Joestars are kind of idiots, George decides to be like, I owe you a life debt from here on in, even though it's revealed later on that George knew all along that Dio's dad was not there to help him and was actually like robbing them. Anyway, so he meets up with the son of the George Joestar, which is Jonathan, and they have a very rough meeting, because I want to say it begins with just like Dio is punking Jonathan throughout this early childhood. He's like abusing...
That's like 100% of their interaction, yeah.
Yeah, he's like abusing him, like punching him down, and then his dad is like, you have to be a gentleman, Jonathan. You can't just go back assaulting him. That would be uncouth. And and I'll also say that Dio's like doing some. They right off the bat establish him being bad by him kneeing a dog in the face.
Yeah, that's like the first thing he does when you see him is he just kicks the fucking dog.
Yeah, so he's like
in like full detail. Like it's a very detailed picture.
Yeah, it is extremely detailed. And so he's mentally and verbally abusing him. He's even when Jonathan finds someone that he likes, he like protects a girl. Dio does a forceful kiss, which if you've never seen it, this is where you thought your first kiss would be. Oh, god damn it.
That was loud ass laughter. They were just laughing at the Dio meme.
Yeah, they were laughing at the Dio meme. Just to let everyone know,
laugh track for the show.
My full family's here, so we'll have a laugh track in the background. So he kisses her, and then he says the famous line, "You thought your first kiss would be something, but it was me, Dio." And then to show ultimate disrespect to Dio, she like washes her mouth out in like a dirty ass river. And from this point on, I think she just kind of disappears. It's also, her name is Arena, by the way. And she kind of like doesn't see Jonathan anymore because it's like the 1880s, and being kissed is like she may as well have had sex with him or something, because that's how puritanical it was back then. So this finally like pisses off Jonathan, and he beats the shit out of Dio, and Dio's like, wait, I thought I broke this guy. Why the fuck is he still fighting back? And so he decides that maybe he should do a different tack. But this is after I think he also kills his dog. This all
he puts the dog in the fucking incinerator.
Yeah, he does. And it's real fucked up. That's how that dog goes. And after Jonathan gives him a beatdown, there's another time skip where they're now 16 years old and the buffest motherfuckers you've ever seen. playing playing rugby, I think. Is that the sport? And now
Rugby, I think, yeah.
and now they're all together now, and they're all happy, and Dio's acting very like nice, which is different. And even though
Really
he's
only 16?
yeah, I think they're only 16 by the time you see him again. Like, you have to
They're
remember.
graduating college, aren't they?
I don't think so. I think they're graduating high school. I thought.
Because Jonathan has like a doctorate in archaeology or some shit.
Okay, maybe that was my misconception of what they were. I could have swore they were 16.
Sure, they're at a university. Hang on, I'm gonna look that up.
Also, it was like
They
the
are
eight-
way too big to be 16. They're
They're all-
fucking huge.
They're also from the 1880s, so I don't know if like back then, like things were
Chapters 1 through 5, at the childhood years, they are 12 years old. And then for the remainder of Phantom Blood, they are 20 years old.
different. Okay, fair enough. Still, for 20 years old, they are insanely buff.
Very big, yes.
They're like 10 times bigger than everyone on their rugby team. I kind of want to be like the opposing team and having to look at them and kind of going, this isn't fair. This
Much do that when they try to tackle Jonathan. There's like 4 of them on him, and he's still going.
Yeah, it seems impossible for them to stop. Anyway, George is now in terrible condition, and Dio is taking care of him, but Jonathan doesn't believe any of this because he still remembers that Dio fucking incinerated his dog. So he looks into it, and it reveals that, like, no, Dio's actually been poisoning George, and this has been his plan to get the Joestar fortune because they're super hella rich. So Jonathan is now able, after getting in touch with, he goes investigating the poison that he's using to like kill off, he's looking for the poison that's killing his father. That's where he meets Ario Speedwagon, and my bad, Robert E.O. Speedwagon.
Robert E.O. Speedwagon, yes.
That is short for either Speedwagon or Ario Speedwagon. So he ends up joining up with him, and then he learns that he got it from Wang Chan,
yes.
So now they have enough to confront Dio. During all of this, Dio starts fucking around with the mask, because I want to say when he was fighting Jonathan when he was a kid, some blood got into the mask, and he realized that something funky happened with it. So he starts
Fighting his kids, it like popped off the wall with the little spikes.
Yeah. So he starts, he uses it on a beggar, and it turns him into a vampire, and he thinks that this is going to be the end of him, and it turns out it isn't, and the guy gets, like, killed into the sun. So I believe Dio's original plan is to use the mask on Jonathan and kill him that way, because Jonathan has been researching the mask during his time. So he figures, like, oh, this would be a good way to get him killed because Jonathan's an idiot. People will believe that he was an idiot and accidentally did this with the mask. But after he sees him turned into, like, a vampire, his plans change, right? At some point, he decides to just
He decides he's gonna do it on himself instead.
Yeah, so he uses it on himself after Jonathan confronts him. And at this point, the entire Joestar family, like, home gets set on fire. Jonathan loses his dad, and Jonathan is able to beat Dio using his family protector and using a bunch of, like, fire stuff. Like, it's implied that he's able to beat him simply because he's on home turf. If I'm remembering correctly. Maybe this is like the early signs that it was Haman the entire time, but I want to feel like the fight was implying that, like, no, his family had his back during the fight.
He impaled Dio on like that statue of their family guardian or something like that.
Yeah. Well, either way, he burns down and he thinks that it's all good, but it turns out it's not all good because Dio is a vampire and he's able to survive, and Wang Chun helps him out because he's also at this point he has not turned Wang Chen into a vampire, so he's just able to survive being horribly burned. So Jonathan goes.
It's kind of the same thing. It's like he survives, but then when Wang Chan is looking for
the mask
shit in the ruins of the thing, he turns it into a vampire. So it kind of all happens at the same time.
Yeah, there you go. So Jonathan is now at the hospital. He gets reunited with Arena at the hospital, and Ario Speedwagon is going into the hospital in I think it was a very funny scene that still sticks into my head, where he's like, I think he's gonna bring flowers to cheer him up, and then he notices there's a woman in there, and he's like, well, it's time for Ario Speedwagon to get us on the way. He, like, says his name out loud in a very, like, goofy ass way.
Are you talking about Speedwagon withdraws coolly?
Yeah, there you go. Speedwagon withdraws coolly.
Yeah.
Which is when I showed that to my brother, I repeated that scene over and over and over again because it was the funniest fucking thing I've seen. He was like,
we forgot to bring up even Speedwagon is afraid.
yeah.
One.
Yeah, that's another good one. Speedwagon is real good in this one. He's a very good guy who's not very helpful in fights, but is there for the moral support. Anyway, so he's going through the hospital. At that point, he meets William Antonio Cepelli, and he teaches him Hamon, and he tells him also that Dio's not dead. And during all this, he's teaching him Hamon, which is basically like photosynthesis attacks.
It's like sun magic.
Yeah, it's sun magic, and he's able to teach him. And also at this point, Jonathan is able to say like, "Oh my God, Hamon is so powerful! Look at me pick up this big ass rock." When he himself should have been able to pick up the big ass rock very easily. Like
super jacked anyway, even without it.
Yeah, and I think you pointed out to me that in that scene there was no giant rock at all. He just magically found one.
There's not one anywhere. There's not one anywhere they are. He picks it up and goes, "Wow, look how easily I can pick up this rock," and then the rock is gone.
Yeah.
It's not anywhere in any other scene either.
Never really explained, but it's fine. It's one of the very few continuity issues is this giant fucking rock. Jonathan, Cepelli, and Speedwagon all go off to go find Dio. Along the way, they fight Jack the Ripper, who has also been turned into a zombie man. Either a zombie or a vampire. Which one is it?
They kind of interchange the term. I think Dio is technically the only vampire, and all the servants are zombies, but I don't know. They use the term very loosely.
Yeah, fair enough. So they fight, and Jonathan's able to kill him pretty easily using his not maximum overdrive, sunset yellow overdrive. Is that it?
I think it's sunlight yellow overdrive.
All right. I always see the dub versions where they call it that. So they fight him, and then they also fight a Bluford and Tarkus. And during this fight, this is where Dio shows up, and Dio quickly reveals that all of you are fucked because I can turn your your sunlight powers into ice, so it does nothing on me. Congrats. There is no way to beat me. And even Cepelli touches him, and he's like, shit, there's no way to beat him because I'm frozen.
Yep.
So he fights Tarkus and Bluford, and I want to say it's Bluford when Jonathan is fighting him. He's able to return him back to his basic form by using the power of sun. And right before he dies, he gives him...
Yeah, he, becomes nice again.
Yes, before he dies, he gives him his sword, and he says, you're going to need a lot of luck, and you're going to need a lot of pluck. And then Jonathan looks at the sword and goes, luck, pluck. And so he gets the sword of luck and pluck. And then he dies and goes back to being dead. And then Tarkus is talking shit about his friend because he's full on, he reveals, there's no way I'm going back to being good, so fuck y'all. Now you have to fight me. And then they decide to run away from him because I also forget, but there was, a kid that put him into the trap. And the kid was, under hypnosis.
Some sort of... Yeah, don't look too far into Dio's powers in part 1.
Yeah, he has, the basic, Dracula vampire, so it's something a vampire would do. So they take the kid, and Cepelli makes a giant leaf, and they fly away,
him and Jonathan use Hamon to stick a bunch of leaves together.
Yeah. And
it makes, a hang glider.
Yeah, so they make a hang glider, and they're able to escape for, 2 minutes.
Apparently he just didn't he literally just jump after them, so they don't get very far?
No, really, it was all for nothing. They just kind of wasted their powers a bit. So they go into this room where they're going to fight Tarkus, and when they go inside, Cepelli suddenly has a flashback back to when he first learned about Hamon. And when he learned about Hamon, his master told him, if you go down this path, then one day you will die inside of a room that smells like death. So he enters the room where Jonathan is going to fight Tarkus, and he realizes that this is the exact same room that he was told that he was going to die in. So Cepelli gets himself ready to fight and die, and he does exactly that. He gets fucking killed by going chopped in half. I believe, not chopped in half. He was like in chains, and then the chains chopped him in half.
Yes.
And then like somehow still alive with only half his body gone, he's able to pass on the last of his Hamon energy to Jonathan, and Jonathan goes basically the early 80s version of Super Saiyan and is able to beat Tarkus. Everyone cries, and Mr. Speedwagon, even though he's been getting a hard time from Zeppeli, also cries for Zeppeli because he was a true gentleman, and then he takes his hat as a tribute, and he wears it throughout the rest of the show. And at this point, after Zeppeli has died, they go to the boy's hometown where Dio is hiding, and then the boy at this point realizes that there's a vampire loose, and he has a sister that might be getting targeted by a vampire, and he's totally right, because Dio's trying to do like the creepiest, like, I want to keep you beautiful forever, please be with me, and then she spits on his face, which then he goes, that was a bad move. I'm gonna give you to this weird looking motherfucker over here, who I forget the band name that he's based off of. Was it... Do you remember that weird, like, snakehead monster?
Hang on. Let me look it up.
He has, like, a really, like... When you hear the name, you're like, oh, god damn it. Like, it's a real, like... It's not as, like... It's, like, less hidden than Mr. Speedwagon's name. It's a very obvious one.
Doobie? I think it's Doobie.
The Doobie, named after the Doobie Brothers.
Yeah, it's Doobie. It's Doobie, yeah.
So Jonathan fights Doobie, easily beats the shit out of him, and I think at this point is when the other Hamon Masters show up.
They meet him on the road right before this, I think.
Okay. So they're gonna go fight Dio in his castle, and then when they're inside...
Remember that Jonathan fights Doobie by literally dropping a cartoon anvil on him. That's how their fight starts.
Yeah, that is how the fight starts. So they go confront Dio. One of the masters is like, we need one more person to die. Let me fight Dio first. And Jonathan's like, I see no problem with this. So the dude fights Dio, and Dio immediately fucking kills this guy. But this guy, as like a headless corpse, not a headless corpse, as just a head, is able to shoot a rose into Dio, and seeing that he can still get injured, at least. So he does, like, that's his final, like, send-off, is a real basic middle finger through Hamon flowers. And now, at this point, they fight. Jonathan and Dio finally confront each other and fight, and through the power of fire, Jonathan is able to stop Dio's ice powers, which I had thought that Dio is clearly gonna win, and then Jonathan is able to stop the fight by going like, you can't put me on ice if I'm on fire, and Dio's like, I didn't expect that anyone stupid enough to do this, so congrats. God damn it, JoJo. I don't know how... There's a real... At this point, Dio has finally realized, like, I gotta stop underestimating this motherfucker, because every single point that I think I've beaten him, he's able to beat me somehow. So he's able to hit him with his Hamon, and Dio's able to stop himself from fully dying by chopping his head off from his body before the evil sunlight can, like, completely take over him. So he's just ahead at this point, and Wang Chun comes in again and is able to take the head. But as far as JoJo is concerned, he's 100%. He's won the day. They avenge Zeppeli. Everything's good. And so he's able to go back. Speedwagon destroys the stone mask. Jonathan marries Arena, and they're going on a board to go to America. And while he's going on board to America, there's a evil casket being entered into it, which is Dio's casket. And when they're inside, Jonathan, when he's having dinner with Arena, starts to realize there's a lot of zombie-looking dudes around here. Like, more than normal, I guess. So he realizes something's up, and also around this time, a drunk priest accidentally opens Dio's casket, and Dio is unleashed. No, he doesn't open it because he realizes that the casket is locked from the inside. And then that's when it opens, and Dio is all up in arms, and Dio launches an attack on the ship one last time. Jonathan's trying to protect Arena at this point, and then Jonathan goes to confront Dio one more time, who is at this point just ahead. And when he's just ahead, he's able to go like, okay, you know what, Jonathan? I'm going to give you kudos where kudos are due. You've able to driven me into just ahead, but I now respect you. And as a terms of respect, I will now take over your body. Because I feel like only you could be my body now. And Jonathan is like, I'm not cool with this. I need my body for stuff. So they fight, and Dio's able to use I-beam lasers, which he now has. And which he had in the previous fight. He used them on him, but he missed. And this time he's at least able to hit like his throat. So it should be very hard for him to do hum on. Jonathan is Jonathan, so he's still able to use hum on one last time. And he's able to make Wang Chen, who has underestimated him, even though Dio has said don't underestimate him, and he's using his zombie body to block a specific part of the ship, and this will cause the ship to blow up and everything will be bad. And Arena wants to die with Jonathan, but Jonathan says, there's a baby right here, I need you to get inside this casket and move on and live, because now you literally can't die, there's no way for you to die. And she goes like, God damn it, JoJo, don't do this, I want to die with you. And he goes like, that's too bad. So they have, I believe, one final kiss. She goes off to go save the baby, which she doesn't want to do, but she does it for Jonathan. And the part 1 ends as Dio's head is being caressed by Jonathan as they're engulfed in flames, and Dio's trying one last time to say, Dia, he's like, if you come with me, Arena, you can have everything you've ever wanted. And at this point, Dio goes, oh, you're already dead. Like, Jonathan dies as he's caressing his head, and they blow up with the ship. And that's how part 1 ends, with Arena and a baby in a casket eventually saved. And that's part 1. That's Phantom Blood. Whew.
So, how do you feel about Phantom Blood?
I really like Phantom Blood, and I think it might be to the fact that I like a lot of horror stuff. And there's a lot of horror elements in it. There's a lot of stuff there's also, it's weird because when you watch JoJo, and even when I was explaining it, there's nothing really like it. In the first one, you can really see that it's very fucking weird in a lot of ways, and everyone is named after like bands, and it's really fun to go like, so I usually have a very hard time remembering anime names, and it's because they're usually named after Japanese people, and unless they have like a nickname like Deku, or their name is shouted constantly like Bakugo, I have a very hard time like remembering their names. But in JoJo, I'm able to remember all their names pretty easy because they're all named after bands, and I think that's pretty great.
Also, they're Englishmen, so
yeah, that
there's
helps.
not really any crazy Japanese names until part 3.
Yeah, and part 3 gets a little bit more. At that point, I just remember them by stands and being weird as hell. But yeah, I remember showing the. I think part 1 is all right, and I think it's like, I don't know. I really like it, and I also understand that like as you get into it, it is the weakest part of the JoJo series, but I think at least a good barrier entry into it. What do you think? Because you had like the opposite experience where you hated it in the beginning.
It was miserable for me for a long time. Like, it starts off really fucking slow. Episodes just dedicated to them like shitting on each other. The entire first episode is just little Dio shitting on Jonathan the entire time. It's all it is.
Yeah.
Episode is mostly them like, we're kind of friends, and then they have like an internal monologue that's like, not really, fuck you, I still hate you. And then Dio becomes a vampire like right at the end, I think.
Yeah, right at the end of episode 2.
Yeah, it's yeah. And then it kind of like has a complete tone shift to like, holy shit, now Dio's literally a fucking vampire. It kind of comes out of nowhere. Like, I mean, you can see the ritual in the beginning with like the Aztec mask, but there's like the Aztec ritual, and you're like, all right, way to like Victorian England and proper gentlemen having like gentlemanly bouts at one another, and then like it completely shifts into like kind of horror, but then not really horror because Jonathan learns a superpower to fight the monsters in like 2 minutes after they become monsters.
Mm-hmm.
Element to it anymore. Also, Jonathan's fucking Superman, so he fought Dio without the powers and still won. So
Yeah, Jonathan is shown to be extremely good and also extremely stupid. So he's able to.
it's kind of a. Also, how does he have like a doctorate in archaeology if he's like an idiot?
I think the actual thing is that he's not an idiot, is that he's a gentleman and such.
Honor before reason.
Yeah, so he believes that people are as honorable as he is, and that's not true. So it gets him into like a lot of like.
And the thing with Phantom Blood, because all of JoJo is silly as fuck.
Mm-hmm.
All of it. Because there's no JoJo part is like all gags and jokes. Like it's all serious shit, but they know how to have fun with it and be like over the top in a fun way.
Yeah.
Feels like you're going back and forth between like, we gotta save the world from vampires, and then like cartoon anvil on the guy is how the fight starts. And then he's like, Dio's trying to rape a girl, and then it cuts to like Speedwagon using his fucking fire hot abs freeze Zappelli's arm.
That's right. I forgot about that. But yeah, he does do that.
He does do that. And like it doesn't keep a consistent tone at all, I think.
No.
Where the
not
later
at all.
parts are like serious shit and they're fighting all these horrible monsters and stuff, but it never loses the tone of like even when shit gets really serious. Whereas in Phantom Blood, it keeps like start stop. Oh, we're doing this silly ass thing. Oh, Dio is cutting off people's heads and putting them on cats.
Yeah, that there's a definite like weird tonal shifts in part 1 that like eventually the other parts do better with. Like there's what's like the best, I'm trying to think of like the best, like again Zappelli is a very like not Zappelli. Yeah, it is Zappelli because Zappelli shows up, and I feel like when he shows up, that's when things go really out of whack because he shows up and he's like the weirdest fucking weirdo in the entire show. Like he shows up and he's just like, "Hello, I want to teach you zoom punch," and he's like, "What?" The show is nothing like this until he showed up and kind of like basically completely changes the world on its head. He's even dressed weirdly compared to everyone else.
Yeah, he's in like a tux with like a checker hat.
Yeah, he's like sipping wine.
Well, yeah, he showed the very first scene he's in. He's sitting on a fence, or for some reason, but he's out on a fence, and he's salting his sandwich. First scene he's in.
Yeah, that's the
thing he does is punch Jonathan in the stomach, and then Jonathan's like, "Oh, I have superpowers now."
Yeah, and I mean that's a lot of the reason why part 1 is like the weakest part eventually. I do feel like there's enough stuff in there that I think is real cool, and especially because I feel the anime is the better way to seeing it, because in the manga it's a little bit rougher because it's older, and so a lot of the art, if you're not into like that Fist of the North Star style, like this is about to get really fucked up looking, then it can be very off-putting and it can be very ugly for people, especially if they're not used to these big ass dudes doing model poses.
Yeah, it's very Fist of the North Star like.
Yeah. But I like the anime because the anime has a lot of good stuff in it. It animates it well. It's able to do the color palette, which that guy does have a color palette, but he doesn't like. He usually just saves it for the covers and stuff, and the actual pages aren't colored. They also do the thing of like, they somehow are able to incorporate a lot of like the manga's weird like sense of like. So the manga itself does a lot of like playing around with like the comic book style, like zoo, like the zzz, like stuff like that, and
a lot of the sound effects and such.
A lot of the sound effects, and they're incorporated into the anime because I feel like they realize like a lot of JoJo is the sound effects, and being able to do
just
like
the general like storytelling style.
Yeah, like
they emulate his style really, really well.
They do. And I also like that they are able to incorporate the end music, which I believe he said, like the actual manga dude has said, like every end song is the inspiration for the arc that he took. So the ending song for part 1 and part 2 is Roundabout, which is another reason why we have the Roundabout meme, because when Zappelli's facing his fate, it fucking ends with a roundabout. Like it transitions into a roundabout in like one of the greatest ways possible, which is maybe one of the coolest things I've seen in like an anime. Like it becomes
another roundabout meme.
Yeah,
it's the to be continued sepia-toned JoJo meme that is everywhere.
And they are able to like do something where like it's very obvious when the episode starts that Zeppeli is not going to be around for a while if you have watched enough anime. So at the end of that episode, when it like basically kind of transitions into going like Zeppeli's fucked, like there's no way of fighting this, they're able to make that moment like mean much more, even though it's something you've seen before, just because they deliver it in a very good way of like using...
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. And the other thing I like, of course, is still I really like the ending to it. I like the idea of like it's kind of the way of like I could have, even though Dio does come back in part 3, I did feel like I didn't need any more Dio because it basically bookends it perfectly, where it's like this is the way it was always kind of gonna end with them. It was with like even at the end, Jonathan like holding onto Dio's head, like not even like in a holding it back. He's just kind of hugging it at that point because this man like for some reason
he knows he's dying. It's like a moment of acceptance.
Yeah, and there has always been this weird thing with Jonathan where he, for some reason, even though he hates Dio, he still likes him because he's his brother. He sees him as his brother even though Dio doesn't necessarily see him as his brother. So there is at least some kind of wrestling in his mind of going like, I know that he was basically lying to me, but I can't shake the feeling that at one point this was my brother. So, like even when he kills him the first time, he does cry because he's like, God damn it, I killed my brother. And it's like, Jonathan, you shouldn't cry for him because that dude was a monster. But because literally he's so dedicated to his ways of the gentleman, he's unable to see like past that. He for some reason wants to believe that there was some form of good in Dio and that he was not able to bring it out in him, and that he basically failed in a lot of aspects of his life and with dealing with Dio. And if he had done things differently, maybe he would have been able to save Dio, and Dio would not have to be the dirtbag that he is, not knowing that obviously to us there was never any real saving of Dio. He was fucked from the start. But to him, in his mind, he's like the ultimate good guy of like, it's similar to Superman, where I guess in Superman's head, he believes that maybe he could one day be friends with all his enemies, even though we know that's never possible. You're gonna fail.
I mean, Jonathan is. I mean, I don't know if you agree with me on this. I think most people do because I talk about this a lot. Jonathan is probably Joestar by a lot. We'll say because they're not always Joestars.
Yeah, I mean,
he's extremely bland as a character. He's pretty much Japanese Superman.
He is, and I think there is something
honorable. Go ahead.
No, I'll let you continue if you're extremely honorable.
So he's extremely honorable. Everything is, I gotta be the good guy, I gotta do the right thing. I don't think he ever actually really kills anyone that doesn't need to. I think his only enemies are zombies, so... And they're always usually, like, horribly unrepentant assholes, like Jack the Ripper or Tarkus. I think Bruford is, like, the only marginally nice guy that he has to kill.
Yeah.
To back into a human first.
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan ends up in a lot of situations that seem terrible. And Bruford knocks him in the water because he's like, haha, you can't use Hamon in the water because you can't breathe in there. And he's like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to swim all the way to the bottom of the ocean and release some trapped air from under a rock and breathe that shit in like Sonic the Hedgehog. And then it'll let me use Hamon underwater.
And it does somehow.
If he thought about it, it does. It works. And I don't know if maybe they thought it was cool when he did it, but it comes off as so stupid and like campy. And plan, like, because we're about to get into Battle Tendency, and in Battle Tendency a lot of that kind of shit happens with Joseph, where he seems to kind of pull shit out of his ass. So he like set it up because he's actually like a smart fighter, whereas with Jonathan like trips and falls into like a pie, and then he pulls the pie off his face and it's like Dio died in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'll say in terms of personality-wise, I still think I like him a lot, and I think it's because he is different. Eventually, like, every Joestar after him is basically in many ways a fuck-up. Like, there's no, like, hiding the fact that, like, throughout the history, all the other Joestars are much more like damaged characters, and the reason they are is because it's much more interesting to do the stories around those types of characters. But for me personally, I do like the character type of the dude who is just a good guy, because very rarely do you actually see it, because again, it's very hard to actually do an interesting good guy, where he, like, Superman is a person that a lot of people find boring, but when you do the right story with him, he's great. Like, I love Kingdom Come because that's Superman wrestling with the ideas of, like, he wants to be the man who is good, the man who has to be above it all, and what happens when the man who has to be above it all isn't the thing people want anymore. So I feel like for that reason alone, I like Jonathan, because he, even though his character is literally, I'm just a good guy, deep down in me, I can't, like, not dislike a good guy, because he's literally just a good guy. It's the same thing where I wrestle with, like, and this is something that's specific to me. I know a lot of people prefer the bad dude, where it's like, also it doesn't help that he's, like, from the 1980s, so the concepts of, like, good and bad were much more clear cut back then, so people weren't really necessarily thinking about, like, oh, the funny thing is like, when you go back to old, like, manga and anime, if the dude's good, he's just super good. If he's bad but also a good guy, he's, like, the biggest asshole in the world, but he has, like, a slight heart of gold. And that's, like, kind of what Jonathan is basically just that. He's the dude who's just really super good. So, yeah, I like that kind of character. And you already finished part 5, so let me just say, I do not like Giorno at all. So, as far as I'm concerned, Jonathan goes above him. And
Dang.
that's...
I did not... That's surprising. I like Giorno.
I just remember reading it, and then...
It's not my favorite?
No. And I think that's probably the reason why. There's, like, a lot of stuff with, like, his attitude that I have a problem with. And I think that's where kind of, like, a lot of, like, even though Jonathan is at the bottom, I can't bring myself to dislike a character whose entire trait is that he's just a good guy. Because I feel like, why should I feel bad that all he is a good guy? When all he does is, like, literally, he has, like, no ulterior motives. What is his motive? I don't know, do good. That's about it.
Yeah. But I mean, that's pretty much Giorno's motive too, though.
He is, but he has a very different, like, attitude and look to him. Where I feel like if I was talking to Giorno, I feel like I'd be a little bit on edge at times, where I'm like, well, maybe I don't know what side he's on. I don't know if I can't piss him off. Where I feel like if you pissed off Giorno would figure out a way to get back at you. Where if I pissed off Jonathan, if I just said, dude, I'm sorry, I was kind of a dick, Jonathan would go, oh, it's all cool, bro. Like, that's his character. Like, if Dio, like, at his last moments go, Jojo, I have to repent, Jonathan would go, my brother, Dio, I'm so glad we can start repenting, and then he would immediately die because he's so trusting.
That's true. That's 100% true.
Like, that's the kind of dude he is. He's basically anime John Cena, and I like John Cena even though I recognize that he's a very, like, bland character. Because it's like, God damn it, why are you not picking up that you're about to be betrayed? It's because that's all you are, is that you're the good guy. And that's my final piece on Jonathan. I think that basically sums it up. It's the same reason I like John Cena.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I think the characters in part 1 are really hit and miss. Like, I don't really like Jonathan, not really because he's a nice guy, but mostly because, like,
they kind of don't have a lot for him to do.
They do anything other than kick ass, but like, he doesn't really.
He doesn't have, like, a
lot of the fights
arc
in part 1 don't feel all that earned. Montage with Zeppeli, and then Jack the Ripper comes out, and then Zeppeli's like, "All right, bro, I'm gonna hand you this glass of wine. You have to totally do this impossible task in one try." And he's like, "All right," and he just does it. And that's, like, the majority of...
Jonathan feels like for the entirety of part 1, like, he's getting ready to go fight Goku. Like, that's the end bit that they're leading up to, is that they need to build up Jonathan to be a threat, just for him to lose at the end, which he does.
He beats Dio, and it's a good fight. I think the fight with him and Dio is pretty good, as far as, like, at least part 1 fights go.
Yeah.
Part 1's super short. It's like 9 episodes only.
Yeah, which I felt was the right amount for what part 1 is.
They spend 2 of them general Dio dickishness, which is fine because that's what made Dio cool. Like, I like Dio. I think he's a good character. I was really happy to see him come back in part 3.
Yeah.
That takes away from time for you to like so many times, because I'm still trying to like parse out exactly what my point is in my head. A really long time, like, god damn it, for me to really follow Jonathan and look at Jonathan's growth and be like, this is normal, this is a regular thing. Whereas he kind of goes from like, what's Haman? I've never even heard of Haman before, to I'm pretty much the greatest Haman user to ever live. No middle ground there.
He's like one of those dudes
Remember when Zeppeli punches the frog and he learns what it is, and then they have that montage where he's like under a waterfall or some shit. They're just like doing shit, and Arena's like, "Yay, learn Hamon." And then in the next scene, he's like, "Well, I'm pretty much the greatest at Hamon ever, so let's go fight Dio now."
He is, and to be fair, no, that's not true, because in part 2, that Jonathan also that Joe start also takes a while to get good. I think the main thing is like literally that's how that story is kind of built. Like, it would be nice if the anime maybe took it a little bit, not even slower, but maybe showed him like stumbling a bit more. But that's also not how that story goes. Jonathan
that's
is
the
just
thing with Jonathan, is that he's not supposed to stumble because he's Superman.
Yeah, he's John Cena. He doesn't stumble.
Yeah, he doesn't start like he gets in all these completely unwinnable situations, and Speedwagon, whose only job is to exposit, he's basically Brock from Pokemon.
He is.
He's just there to go, "Oh God,
no,
to Jonathan." And the number of times Speedwagon goes, "Oh my God, Jonathan's totally screwed. There's no way he can get out of this," and then he completely pulls it out by just the seat of his own asshole. Except for the Dio fight. Even kind of the Dio fight still too, though.
Yeah, he's kind of barely able to win that Dio fight, and it's only because Dio doesn't have good situational awareness that he didn't think like, oh, I didn't think that this sword would touch that fire, and then I would be so screwed right now.
Then it's like, he's gonna he's gonna go punch him, and Dio's like, haha, I can freeze you 1,000,000 times.
Yeah, it's,
Nope, you're frozen again. And then Dio's like, no, now I can kill you because I can break your carotid artery, because Araki has this weird carotid artery. I think it comes up once every part. I think they mention it one time every part at least.
Yeah, I think they do.
Yeah, Jonathan melts himself and he cuts Dio in half somehow, and it doesn't kill him, even though it looks like it really should have killed him.
Yeah, he's just able to survive in the most like BS ways possible.
He's like melting. He cuts him in half and he's like, God, the Haman melting. But then he just sticks his halves back together and he heals, because I thought Haman was supposed to kill him. And then later he just punches him like in the stomach with Haman, and that does kill him, so I don't really know. I think part of the problem comes from the fact that Haman doesn't make any sense.
No, it really doesn't.
It makes sense. It's one of the least explained anime powers ever, which is fine. I don't care really that much about that part.
Yeah.
They play it completely seriously as like a martial art in this one.
Yeah,
it's like the Turtle School. Like, that's Master Roshi, and he's like, yeah, do literally anything you want. Like in part 2, Haman also does literally anything. Don't even try to fuck around and be like, yeah, this is an extremely serious martial art technique. Lisa throws them in a pit, and she's like, all right, you better use Haman to get out of this bullshit or you're dead. And that's all they're training.
That's true. I think a lot of it is simply just it's like kind of like a weird Deus Ex Machina where you don't really fully understand Haman, other than you need to breathe to use it. Like, and also Haman is like so easily like cut down. Like, there's so many situations where Haman shouldn't be possible, and then Jonathan just kind of figures out a way to use it. Like, down to even to like him being like, his throat is gone and he can't use Haman anymore. He still figures out a way to use Haman.
Well, like, there's some weird like, he says he's using the last of the Haman inside of him, so I don't know if that's like he still had some breath in there so he can still use it. Because they talk about Haman a lot like it's a finite thing. Like it's ki, like it's Dragon Ball ki.
Yeah. Because Zeppeli is able to give Jonathan his Haman.
Yeah, he's able to grab Jonathan's hand and give it all to him, and that makes Jonathan like super stronger than he was before. It's very confusing. But I think the problem, another complaint that I have about Stardust Crusaders, I think Araki find his footing before everything can kind of pan out the right way. because Battle Tendency does a lot of what Phantom Blood does, completely different way that's way better. To the transition from Stardust Crusaders to Diamond is Unbreakable, where in Stardust Crusaders, stands are kind of all over the place and they don't really make any sense. And then in Diamond is Unbreakable, they're a lot more consistent. They're like, the powers are more abstract, but the rules are more consistent.
It's kind of just feeling your way through, where I feel like that's kind of his writing style, where he comes up with an idea and then he doesn't fully grasp it until like another part later, which is maybe why he does his series in entire parts. That's why JoJo's a part 1 is completely different. It's like a continuation, but because he says like, oh, this is part 2, he's able to maybe like go into his mindset like, okay, this is something new, and maybe I can expunge a little bit and I don't have to carry the same baggage as part 1.
Yeah, I could see that. And it might also be why there's so much of time skipping in JoJo parts as well. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is true or not. This is just shit that I get told on Twitter a lot, but obviously you know how this goes with old anime where people just make shit up and it becomes, like, quote-unquote true.
Yeah.
Like the Gohan was going to end the series thing when he killed Cell.
Yeah, of course.
People have, like, said that the first character that was designed for JoJo, and the reason that Jonathan seems so, like, is that the original character built was Dio, and that Araki built Jonathan specifically to be the exact opposite of Dio. So it's like Dio's this irredeemable asshole, so he thought, okay, to oppose him, I need this character who's literally just this shining beacon of justice at all times.
Like the yin to his yang.
Basically. But yeah, I'm told that the series kind of built up from Dio, not from Jonathan.
I think that
was made after Dio to sort of like foil him. So I don't know if that's true or not, but that's an interesting point if it is true.
Yeah, it is, because there is a lot of things when you think they do spend like part 1 is a good, like, especially until he turns into like a vampire. They are kind of like sharing double time. Like every time when Jonathan's trying to figure out what's going on with Dio is doing like his best to try and figure out a way to stop like Jonathan, like even more so than like an adversary. Like they kind of share like a kind of duality of like these are two protagonists, and it's not until like Dio turns into a vampire and has to go heal that Jonathan finally like takes actual center stage as your main dude.
Do that. Dio, I feel like just enough
In part 1?
in the entire series, I think, because in part 3 he's really not there for that much.
No.
You know, he leaves while JoJo goes to train Haman, and then he shows up for like half a second, and then he leaves it to his goons again, and then they have the final fight, and it's over. And I mean, maybe that's just the fact that Phantom Blood's extremely short. It's definitely like just the most pronounced character in part 1.
Yeah.
A lot of time with like, you know, Zeppeli, who's just like nothing. He's posh gentleman, and that's all he is.
Based off of Salvador Dali, I think. So what it kind of explains why he's such a weird fucking weirdo.
And then, you know, Jonathan, who's basically just like vanilla. He's white bread, you know. And then Speedwagon, who, despite being a giant meme, is pretty much just a narrator.
He is. He's a narrator like, who's sometimes just... He is basically like narrating his entire life. It does feel like when
he doesn't really do anything.
When he's saying lines like "It's time for Zeppeli to make a cool exit," he's just kind of going like, "Yeah, I'm the narrator of this story," and Zeppeli knows that Zeppeli is not needed right now.
But yeah, I mean, it just kind of sucks to have the most powerful personality in the story kind of take a back seat to characters that ultimately are not particularly interesting.
Yeah.
I don't hate Jonathan, because it sounds like I'm totally ragging on Jonathan and I hate the shit out of him. I really don't. He's a fine character because there's nothing there to hate, you know?
Yeah. It's very weird.
Not deep enough of a character to hate. So, like, I like him in that he's a nice dude who does cool shit. But, like, there's just nothing really to him, I feel like.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, he's definitely, out of all the Joestars, the most, like, strangely enough, stable. It doesn't really feel like much can.
Yeah, that's true. It's funny how, like, right after Jonathan, all the JoJo's suddenly become, like, delinquent criminals.
They do, and I have a feeling this might be the idea that every single... Even starting with George, I'll just say George was a bad father, And I feel like the JoJo's suffer
Yes.
from having a lack of a good male role model because their good male role model's body was stolen by Dio.
Maybe that's true.
Like,
I guess we've probably spent a long ass time just talking about Phantom Blood, so we
yeah,
should
we
probably
have.
move on. But
let's move on.
you know, it's solid, but you probably will not like it until you like the rest of JoJo first.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So anyway, Battle Tendency. I'm gonna speed through this one because it's also
long.
pretty short.
Well, yeah.
First Crusaders is like an entire season, whereas season 1 is literally Phantom Blood and Battle Tendency stuck together.
It is.
Battle Tendency is part 2. Takes place about, I think it's 50 years after Jonathan dies, somewhere along those lines.
Yeah, at this point, everyone's much older.
Yeah, so Arena's very old, Speedwagon is very old. Those are, I think, the only... Well, I guess those have to be the only holdover characters because Zeppeli died and Jonathan died.
The monk guy shows up later, who was one of the dudes who was at the final fight with Dio, who took the wrong message from
Shows
the
up
fight.
in the beginning.
Yeah, he's only there in the beginning. That's the only characters that really survive, though.
Yeah, so it's Arena, who kind of is only there in the very beginning, through the whole thing, because he's Speedwagon. And Strazo, I think is his name?
Yeah, named eventual. His name would later on go into Expire Elemental Hero Stratos.
It also comes from the band Dire Straits. That's where the two of their names comes from. Their name was Dire and Strazo.
God damn it.
Straits, yeah. So he decides that he's like afraid of getting old. Quote unquote kills Speedwagon, even though Speedwagon doesn't die. Because apparently they're just fucking everywhere. You can just get him whenever you want. Because he doesn't want to get old and doesn't want to die. So then he realizes that the only person in the world that could be a threat to him is the grandson of Jonathan Joestar, whose name is Joseph Joestar. Arena escaped the ship with that baby. She was also pregnant. That baby that leaves the ship, and then also Arena and Jonathan's child, who I think is also named George, but he's not relevant.
No, he's not.
I don't know, you kind of cold open with Joseph being just like a dick, because Joseph is
I'll say that's
campy Yusuke Urameshi.
Yeah. I'll also say he wasn't being... I think the opening is him fucking with police, if I'm remembering
I guess
correct.
it's not really him being a dick, but he's, you know, he's...
It's more like him being a hero.
When you think of Jonathan, you think of a knight in shining armor.
Yeah.
And then when you think of Joseph, he's a complete different... He's like a punk with a heart of gold, is basically his character.
Yeah. I think a campy Yusuke is a
Jonathan
good
was
way
very
of looking
much-
at him.
Yeah, whereas Jonathan was very much brute force, Joseph is very much cunning and trickery. So this guy steals his wallet. His name was Smokey. He steals Joseph's wallet and tries to run away. Joseph covers for him because the cops are shitty. And the cops are like, don't lie to me. So he beats the ever-loving shit out of the cops because he can use Haman. He is kind of like I guess you'd say a prodigy because he knows how to use it without any training. He shoots a Coke cap off of a Coke bottle with Haman and shatters the cop's finger. This is the start of where Haman they just start making it jokey now.
Yeah.
Like, it's still a serious power, but they stop trying to be like fun into people. Now Haman in part 2 just does whatever you need it to do at any point in time. So Strazo shows up, who is now a vampire. Wagon, I'm gonna kill you, and then I'm gonna go kill Arena, and then no one will know about vampires, and no one will know how to stop me, and I'll be immortal, and I'll take over the world, and I'll be the greatest thing ever.
It's gonna
Pulls
happen.
a Tommy gun out of like nowhere, out of like hammer space, and he shoots the shit out of Strazo with it. And that's the end of the very first episode, is him emptying a Tommy gun into Strazo, because they really want to show you this is not us Joestar. This is a whole new Joestar. Fight in the beginning, and the beginning fight with Strazo is one of my favorites, I think, in part 2 actually. Just because it showcases like Joseph's fighting style. Because, you know, Strazo has all of Dio's powers except for the ice. He can't do the ice thing. But he can shoot the laser beam eyes that Dio could shoot. They're shooting a mirror so he can get a sneak attack on him.
Yeah.
And then he ties a bunch of grenades to his scarf on all the grenades. And all the grenades blow Strazo into a bunch of pieces. And then Strazo reconnects himself because he's a fucking vampire. Reveals his ultimate technique, which is the Joestar family secret of running away. Books it out of there. And then they have a final showdown on a bridge because Strazo's like, fuck you. I'm going to kill this girl if you don't fight me. And Joseph uses shot glasses to deflect the I-beams. He fills them with Haman, and they bounce off, and they kill Straizo instead. It's honorable suicide by filling himself with Haman, because he knows how to use it. But his vampire body can't take it anymore, and he dies. But he tells Joseph, before I die, the Pillarmen, who are the new bad guys, basically, of this arc. So Joseph's like, shit, that sounds really bad. To find Speedwagon, because I don't think Speedwagon's actually dead. And it turns out Speedwagon is being held prisoner by the Nazis, because this is World War II era now. Prisoner by the Nazis in Mexico. Place in America. We're not in Britain anymore. I forgot to say that. I think we're in New York.
Yeah, it's in New York.
Yeah. Down to Mexico to bust out Speedwagon. He cross-dresses in what is another famous meme scene with Tequila Joseph. And then the Nazis are like, dude, you're fucking giant. You're obviously not a girl. You're like 7 dudes put together. And so he just beats the shit out of them, and he steals their uniform, and he sneaks into the Nazi compound where they have one of the Pillarmen who has come back. He's resurrected. He can do. And the Pillarmen are all basically super Dios.
With less
ones, basically. I don't really know how to explain what they are. They're an ancient race of being that is very similar to vampires, but they're better.
Yeah.
The Pillarman breaks out and starts killing all the Nazis. And Joseph makes his appearance to start fighting the Pillarman to save Speedwagon. And this is also when you meet Rudolf von Stroheim. Probably a rare case of a heroic Nazi in I don't want to say non-German fiction, because I don't know if the Nazis have ever been heroic in German fiction. Probably not. But
there's a lot of propaganda films during World War II.
Non-Hitler supervised German fiction.
There might be some where the Nazi turned out to he stopped being a Nazi. But usually they're depicted as bad people.
So Stroheim stays a Nazi the whole time, and he's a primary protagonist. He's one of the main good guys in this.
He's also the inspiration for
Starts
Guile.
Fighting. Yes, that's where the hair from Guile comes from.
Also the patriotism.
He's very big on Nazis in Germany, and Joseph is like, shut the fuck up, I have to fight this Pillarman, because I'm the only one that can do it, because I know how to use Haman. So they have a little fight, and because sunlight's the only way to kill him, just like the vampires, because Joseph's Haman is not good enough side, but he hides himself in Stroheim's body, so Stroheim blows himself up, and then Pillarman into a well, so that the sunlight reflecting off the well would make a tube of sunlight that would turn him into rock, and then, because I guess that's what happened when they get into rocks, and that's how he manages to just barely beat that guy and save Speedwagon. Then Speedwagon's like, dude, that sucked, and there's more Pillarmen, and you are not good enough. Italy, is it Italy?
Yeah. I believe they go to Italy next because
I'm sure it's Italy. And to meet William Zeppeli, so the grandson of Jonathan Joestar and the grandson of William Zeppeli meet up in Italy. This is Caesar Zeppeli, like Joseph, because he thinks that his grandfather dying was Jonathan's fault, which it kind of was. Are kind of similar characters, and they have their little Haman back and forth, where, again, Haman just can do anything. Joseph literally uses it to put a pigeon in a woman's mouth. I don't know. And then, Caesar uses it to hypnotize somebody, and Caesar fights with bubbles. Anyway, it's a lot cooler than it sounds, Caesar's powers.
Yeah, it
Caesar's
is.
cool as shit. Really, really cool. So, they don't like each other at first, but they kind of eventually... I think they bond over, actually, the first fight with the Pillarmen, because they're with one of Zeppeli's friends, who is a Nazi, but he's also, a nice guy.
Another sign.
A lot of this... Yeah. This one does a thing where it's they're Nazis, but they're people first, and it's ideology doesn't govern them, it's their individuality or whatever that governs them.
Yeah.
And they stumble onto the Pillarmen. I don't know if they stumble onto them or if they go on purpose to find the Pillarmen. I forget which one. But anyway, the Pillarmen come back to life, and they start fucking up all these Nazis because they can't do anything, obviously. Accidentally kill Caesar's buddy, who was just throwing up the craziest death flags ever. I'm pretty sure, on the way there, he's like, oh yeah, I proposed to my sweetheart, and we're gonna get married, tomorrow, and then I'm gonna retire from my job of driving cabs or whatever. And
yeah,
so yeah, he was fucked.
He was fucked. He may as well have just been ending his shit with, Roundabout playing in the background, because you knew that this motherfucker was going to be dead by the end of this episode. He
signed the death warrant himself, yeah.
Yeah.
So he dies, and Caesar and Joseph pop one of the iconic JoJo poses where they do that duo pose.
Yeah, the hand over one hand.
Yeah, where Joseph's got pounding his chest and Caesar's got the hand in front of his face, the old school John Cena hand.
Yeah, basically.
And so they go and they fight the Pillarmen, and they get their shit absolutely pushed in because they're not good enough at all. Their Haman is not strong enough to fight these guys who are super powerful, and they have elemental powers. The one that they fight first can use wind, and he completely destroys them. And they put these little poison rings inside of Joseph's body because Joseph kind of tricks them. He's like, because if you don't kill me, I could totally get stronger with Haman, and then I would be a good fight. I know you want to have a good challenge because that's, appealing to their warrior side or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So they put these, I think they call them wedding rings of death. Is that what they call them?
I believe so.
They stick him into Joseph's body, and in 30 days they'll dissolve and they'll kill him because they'll put poison in him. The way to kill them is the antidote is in their nose ring and lip ring, and they go off to try to find this magical red stone. They need to do whatever their master plan is. So Joseph and Caesar were like, that sucked. We need to get even stronger. Like, well, let me dial up the Speedwagon Foundation because that exists and is awesome.
Yeah, because at some point Speedwagon was revealed to be like a fucking entrepreneur and was actually really smart, and he was able to find this entire corporation.
Yeah, it turns out he like stumbles onto oil fields or something, and he gets super rich. Yeah. And he makes a foundation of people that like help fight paranormal stuff, basically.
Yeah.
Caesar and Joseph to find Lisa, who is Strizo's daughter and one of the only Haman masters left, maybe the only one.
Also the inspiration for Rose from Street Fighter.
Street Fighter that comes out of the JoJo.
Yeah.
Also, not really related, but Benny Maru from King of Fighters is literally pretty much just Polnareff from Part 3.
Oh, yeah.
So they call him Polnareff. When they're designing him in-house, he's referred to as Polnareff, not by his real name.
That's funny.
They go on, they find her, and she puts a breathing mask on Joseph, and she's like, dude, you really suck. You really got to get your shit together. Island, and she throws them in this pit that's full of oil. And she says, you got to use your Haman to climb up this tower. You stick onto the tower, you slip off, but I'm not going to help you, and I'm not going to feed you. So if you don't get out of there, you're just going to die down there. So eventually they get out Caesar, who is the more skilled of the two at this point, right way, by like going through the middle by doing some bullshit. And then Joseph does it the wrong way, but it shows how like his ingenuity in battle and the way he thinks outside the box and everything. It's a good showcase of characters. So they both pass, and they both train with Lisa how to use Haman. Arrive because Lisa is guarding the red stone that they need. They kill one of their instructors during the graduation ceremony. They kill Joseph's by defeating his instructor in battle. Joseph goes toward his lesson, but one of the Pillarmen, whose name is SEDC, which is their way of not getting sued by AC/DC, the band.
Yeah, because I believe in the manga his name is just straight up AC/DC.
It's just the 4 letters AC/DC, yeah. But they change it to SEDC so that it looks more like an actual name.
Yeah.
And his powers are of fire, and Joseph have a long fight, and Joseph's new skills allow him to win, where he funnels Haman through the threads of his hat because he unravels his hat and wraps him up in the string, and the Haman goes through the string and kills him. Turns out he survives as a brain because like nothing fucking kills these guys. And he possesses Lisa's attendant, Susie Q. She steals the redstone and she mails it off to wherever the fuck the bad guys are so that they can get it. Joseph have a bro moment where they save Susie Q by positive and negative Haman into her at the same time, so it neutralizes itself, so she doesn't get hurt, and it only kills SCDC. He runs out of her and then dies in the sunlight, and they decide they need to start adventuring to go get that redstone back because the bad guys can't get it. Germany yet again, who is like, you need to come with us because we gotta stop these Pillarmen. And then it turns out that Stroheim survived blowing himself up with a fucking grenade, and now he's Robo Stroheim.
That's right. All accurate.
Yep. And he does like this weird ass move where he puts his hands behind his head and he like humps, and then a gun comes out of his chest and he's like hump shooting the gun. It's very strange.
Very
hitting cars. Yeah, he's fighting cars, and Cars manages to get the redstone and run away because even Cyborg Stroheim is not enough. And then him and Hustle, where Joseph manages to save the stone from him at the last minute, and they get away. They're at some kind of villa. They're getting chased down by them. I may skip something here in the middle. I'm not entirely sure if I'm jumping ahead or not. And they're like, all right, we got to go this way to get them. But they're totally hiding, and Caesar's like, let's fuck them up. I hate these guys. They killed my family. They killed my grandpa. They killed my dad. It's like, bro, that's stupid as shit. Who gives a shit about these dead old guys? And Caesar's like, wow, fuck you. And they start fighting each other. And Caesar leaves the group to go off on his own, to Wamu by himself. And he's actually, and he pretty much wins the fight, but he makes a mistake in his anger. Kill him. And you have an extremely emotional death scene where a very bloody near-death Caesar yanked the lip ring out of Wamu's ring, which he does succeed in doing. And then he uses his blood to make one last bubble bring to Joseph so he can get rid of the poison. and to give him his Haman in a power-up that is pretty much the same thing that his grandfather did. Zeppeli family spirit, which is kind of funny, but it's a very sad scene. And Lisa arrive, and they break down crying. It's a rough scene.
Yeah.
But then they move on, and they confront Kars and Wamu, and they're like, we're going to fight 2 versus 2. Ed gets to keep the stone. So if we win, we're going to kill you guys. If you win, you can kill us and take the stone, and then you can take over the world. So the first fight is Joseph versus Wamu in a goddamn chariot race, and it's exactly as cool as it sounds. The scene is awesome.
Yeah.
Chariot race, and they fight the whole time through, and Joseph, again, is outgunned, but he uses his wits to win. And he and Wamu have like a warrior bonding moment as Wamu is dying. Kars is set to fight Lisa, and he cheats because he's a giant douche who doesn't care anymore about following the rules now that Wamu is dead. Shots Lisa, and then he uses her as leverage against Joseph. The zombies on Joseph, and he's like, you lose, I'm gonna have you ripped apart by my zombies, and then I'm gonna go get the red stone. Stroheim comes back for part 3 of Robo Stroheim, and all the Nazis show up with these UV ray lamps, and they start killing all the zombies in this giant battle of Nazis versus zombies.
Where the first time ever
now
the Nazis are legit the good guys.
They're like the cavalry who shows up at the last minute to save the day. So Joseph goes on to take on Kars, is losing really badly because Kars has Lisa hostage, and Joseph has to hang on to this rope because if he lets the rope grow, he's going to drop Lisa and she'll die. Kars, well, he can barely move, and he manages to, again, he outwits Kars, and he ties the rope around his own leg so it won't fall. Shatters Kars's power is like not elemental, it's just like a wrist sword. It's his wrist sword, and Kars is like, fuck, this sucks. Just to swipe the red stone from Lisa at the last minute, and we don't see it happen. And he's laying on the ground, everyone thinks he's dead, and he slips his stone mask on, and he puts the red stone in the stone mask, and Stroheim, in his eagerness to kill him, shoots UV rays at it, and that turns out to be the thing that he needed to save it with. Triggers the red stone as the UV rays, and the stone mask stabs into his brain, and it turns him into like vampire +2. He becomes the ultimate life form with the power over all life.
Yeah, he becomes Shadow the Hedgehog, the ultimate life form.
Basically. And so he turns his hand into a flower, which then blooms into a squirrel, and then the squirrel goes fucking crazy and starts fucking up the Nazi army.
Not before it, like, there's a real, like, funny scene where the squirrel is just acting like a squirrel, and everyone's like,
buddies up with the other squirrel, and they're like, what the fuck is going on? And then it rips the other squirrel to pieces.
Yeah, and in the anime, they do it, like, that scene is played with, like, a dubstep scene going on in the background. With, like, the best use of dubstep ever is when the squirrel's fucking going crazy, attacking everyone.
Tearing apart the Nazis, and, Joseph is like, what do we do? This guy's immune to sunlight now because of his ultimate life form powers. They have to use the secret technique of the Joestar family and to run the fuck away. And he steals a Nazi warplane, and he's fighting Kars in the plane, as that he has to avenge his friends by killing Joseph. Besides, he's going to fly Kars into a fucking volcano, and he's going to ram him into the lava, and he's going to sacrifice himself. So they're fighting these feathers at the plane, and then the feathers turn into piranhas and start attacking Joseph in the plane. And then he makes the plane crash by using octopus tentacles to grab the engines of the plane. But eventually Joseph, again, he throws his parachute out, power or some shit tied to it, so that Kars goes to attack it, thinking that it's him. But he tricks him and he rams Kars with the plane. You got me, but that's okay, I can get away because I can fly. And right as he goes to try to fly away, Robo Stroheim's hand flies out of nowhere and stabs him in the neck, because now we're back for Robo Stroheim Part 4.
The revenge of
Stroheim
Robo
somehow... Yeah, he somehow stowed away in the plane. I have no idea how. Even the character doesn't know. Because Joseph's like, dude, what the fuck? And Stroheim's just like, yeah, I'm here. At Kars again, and Joseph rams Kars with the plane, and he goes to knock the plane into the lava, and he jumps out, and Stroheim catches him. That Stroheim's mechanical legs hit the ground and explode. So Stroheim is literally a one-handed torso at this point. And they're like, well, alright, Kars is burning up in the lava. And you see him burning up in the lava, so he goes to pick up Stroheim and carry him back, and they're going to go back and say they won. Just out of the ground and slices off Joseph's hand, and is back to kill them. Joseph, red ring of death, because Kars is like, oh, by the way, I can also use Haman, but mine is so strong that it can melt people. Sunlight, for it to hurt you, I can just melt your body. So Joseph just kind of lays there and accepts that he's going to die. He intercepts Kars' attack using the red stone, because he just gets a burst of, shonen protagonist will to live. Version of the redstone getting touched by Kars' Haman that's already really powerful causes the volcano to erupt, And then what spawns after the volcano erupts is the most insane sequence there's ever been. On this rock flying into the sky, but Cars is like, it's fine. I can just fly off of this thing because I can make wings. But then Joseph's severed arm was also launched by the volcano, and it hits Cars in the throat just like Robo Stroheim's did. And that distracts him long enough for more rocks to keep hitting him that came out of this volcanic eruption, launched into fucking space. And then Cars was like, alright, I gotta use back to the planet. But then he tries to shoot air out, but the air freezes because he's in space. And then his whole body freezes solid, and he just floats through space of ice. And then Joseph is plummeting out of space, and he has this sad moment where he says goodbye to and, you know, you think that you're going to have the second JoJo that's about to die. It says, you know, in 19, whatever the hell, 39 or whatever, Joseph Joestar dies on this volcanic island. A funeral where they're all mourning Joseph. They put a little funeral together for him, and, you know, it's Lisa, Arena, Speedwagon, and some other people that are just there. And they're all mourning him as you see a car pull up, and a character walks up and puts his hands in front of Arena's face and says, guess who? Joseph the whole time, he didn't die. The rock that he was on cushioned the fall back into the sea. The fishing boat who took him to Venice, and then Susie Q, Lisa's attendant, nursed him back to health, and then they fell in love and got married. Forgot to tell anybody else that he was still alive. They have a cute little scene where Joseph is mad that she made his family worry, so he chases after her, yelling at her, on it, and then we get after this scene, so you see that Joseph and Susie Q have a kid named Holly together. Smokey becomes the first black mayor of
New York?
Georgia?
Oh, Georgia.
He becomes a black mayor in the United States. Stroheim dies in the Battle of Stalingrad while he's trying to hold off the Russian troops so the Germans can escape. Dies of a heart attack at like 82 or something like that. And Arena passes away on her deathbed with everyone there to say goodbye. It's a very sweet little ending. There he is. Oh, Lisa's Joseph's mom. I completely forgot about that.
Yeah,
she's Joseph's mom.
Yeah,
To mention that part. Yeah, she's totally Joseph's mom. She bangs saved on the boat with that Jonathan died for, and then she bangs the baby that's in Arena's belly that she then babies out later, and then that baby is Joseph.
Yeah, it's been like they've been kind of they hold it back to like way at the end.
Well, they kind of do. Like they tell you that she was the baby that they saved kind of early on, but Joseph doesn't put together that baby is his mom right away.
No, but to be fair, not a lot of people like told him. I'm assuming that he knows like literally nothing about his parents.
Yeah, he doesn't find out until well after the fact.
Yeah,
he's a wealthy screenwriter, and she lives out the rest of her life in peace.
She
like,
remarries.
It's the end, and it's a touching ending. And then we see an old man walking through an airport. The old man with his luggage, and the old man asks if you're. He says, "Oh, it's okay. Wait a minute. Are you Japanese?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, I'm Japanese." So the old man grabs him by the head and then knees the shit out of him because he says, my daughter married a Japanese man, so now I fucking hate the Japanese. It is Joseph, and he's like in his 60s or 70s or something, off to go meet his daughter, who called him to come and help with her son. A coffin being lifted out of the sea with the words Dio on it. It's extremely confusing to me where that coffin came from because Arena totally escaped in Dio's coffin. A young man in a long trench coat inside a prison cell at the camera, and then it cuts to say, get ready for part 3, Stardust Crusaders. Of course, that young man is Jotaro Kujo, Stardust Crusaders. He is the third JoJo. And obviously, it also tells you that the villain of Part 3 is going to be Dio, as they have just pulled him out of the ocean.
Huh. So, yeah, all right. Here's the funny thing is that scene right there, so him turning old and kneeing that dude because he was Japanese, that's the beginning of Part 3 in the manga. Like, Part 2 ends, like, right there. Like, after the day has been saved and they're at his funeral. So the anime actually like includes a little bit.
Interesting, because in the anime they completely redesigned Joseph from that 3. They give him his actual like Indiana Jones looking design in Part 3. But in the Part 2 version, he's got like scraggly hair and he's just in like a regular coat.
Yeah. Huh. Weird.
Completely different in the anime from the ending of Part 2 to the beginning of Part 3.
Interesting. All right, but I guess that makes more sense to like better fit into to tell you like, hey, here's the next part. This is where it's gonna be.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so it sets us up for the next part. We see Jotaro, we see that Dio is back, and so the threat of the Stone Mask has not yet been completely destroyed, because even though the Pillar Men
are gone,
Dio is back to fuck some shit up.
Man, yeah, and that's Part 2, Battle Tendencies.
Battle Tendency.
Oh, is it Battle Tendency, not Tendencies?
And C.
Okay, Battle Tendency.
Our Adventure Part 2 Battle Tendency.
All right. I believe you. So this part 2, I'll start off just to give you a little break, because you just gave a lot of talking right there, so I'll give you a little break. Part 2 is maybe my favorite part. Like, in terms of, like, from through beginning to end, part 2 is my favorite part. I fucking love Joseph. I love that his intro is basically stopping racist cops, because no matter what era I grew, no matter the time area, I like seeing racist cops get beat up by Coca-Cola bottles. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I love it. And then he makes, like, in a lot of ways, he's set up to be like, it's kind of very, I want to say it's very loud, but also very subtle, because he's very loudly saving this black dude, and he's also not really caring all that much that he's black in a time where that's all anyone cared about. So I feel like, I don't know if that was on purpose or not, but it does let you know, like, even though he's very rough, he still has the kind of good guy spark that is in his family, where he's like, I don't see the reason to hate this person at all. So that's his intro.
Because that actually extends a lot to Arena as well. It just seems like that generally they're just good people.
Yeah,
because I think Arena, like, he introduces them to Arena, and she's like, "Oh, great,
yes, hello."
He with the family.
Yeah, like they all basically accept him, and I think Smokey is also a little bit like it actually is a shame that they don't use Smokey that much, because I want to say that when they're in the car with Nazis, Smokey is not having a great time. Like, I would
assume not. Smokey gets kind of relegated to the background very quickly.
He does, and I think the reason why is because the time period would have made it very hard to write for him and not go like, wouldn't all these characters be kind of treating him like shit? So I feel like he kind of put him in the background for that exact reason, where he was good for the intro.
I think he's there in the intro, and he doesn't come back again until Speedwagon comes back at the very end. I think he's gone through almost all of it.
Yeah.
When Joseph goes to Mexico, and you don't see him again until the final battle with Cars. I'm like 90% sure.
Yeah, he's not used a whole bunch, and I can understand kind of not like, they use him enough to like let you know how the kind of dude that Joseph is. And
yeah, he's a very good establishing character moment for Joseph, but
yeah,
his role as the buddy gets very quickly overtaken by Caesar.
Yeah, it does. And that's understandable, because Caesar can actually use him on and stuff. But yeah, I love that. I love the references back to part 1 with the relationship between the Zeppeli and the Joestar, where in the part 1, Jonathan had a very much deep respect, and in this one he can't fucking stand him until eventually he kind of does, where it's much more earned, their friendship, and a lot of what Zeppeli's dealing with, where I feel Zeppeli in this one is kind of dealing with the legacy of what his family is, which I think his family's legacy is dying, and he kind of like
the human spirit.
Yeah, I think he kind of mentions it, but his dad also died in a very similar manner. Like, every single Zeppeli does not live past a certain age, and that's true.
Zeppelis have a history of sacrificing themselves for the greater good.
Yes, they do, and let me tell you, that's true for out of all JoJo. If you have a Zeppeli, it's never a good sign, if that's your last name. But I like him. I even like the mentor of Lisa, even though she's not really used that much. She's used just enough to go like, this is like the kind of... She's just like the badass mentor who tries to be super cool at all points, and even at the point where... after Caesar's died and she's keeping her cool, eventually she even loses it, because it's like, even though she's been guarded this entire time, because you can definitely feel like when she shows up there's at least some kind of form of chip on her shoulder, but even something like Caesar passing is like too much for her to handle. Like, this is a situation where like, no, it doesn't matter what kind of person you are, this was your friend, and now they're gone, and also they were killed.
The supporting cast of part 2, I think I would say is my favorite part 2. I like it a lot. I think it's the most consistently good, like, the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, part 3 is slow as shit. It drags a lot in the very beginning.
Yeah, that's true.
Diamond is Unbreakable has a lot of fluff episodes where you're like, what the fuck is even any of this?
There's
part 1 is part 1.
Yeah,
but part 2 is the most, I think, consistently good all the way through. You never... Yeah. It's not too long where you're like, this is really bloated and slow. It's not too short where you feel like they're rushing through things. It's just the right size. It's just the right speed.
And
they're great. Joseph is great. Caesar's great. But the supporting cast, it's an old show. Well, I guess the show is not old, but the series
It's from
old.
the 80s, you know.
Yeah, but the anime was from 2012. But it's adapting a series from the 80s. Supporting cast just gets kind of glossed over in favor of Joseph, because Joseph actually beats every Pillar Man by himself.
Yeah, he is able to do that.
AC 1-on-1 wins. He fights Wamu after Wamu kills Caesar and wins. And then he steps in after Cars defeats Lisa and wins. Part 2 has such a good party. Like the traveling party in Part 2 is great.
Yeah.
Because it's got Joseph, it's got Caesar, it's got Lisa. These are 3 different Hamon masters that we spent a lot of time with, and they all have their own unique powers. You know, Lisa has the scarf. Into the scarf, it becomes rigid, and she can do stuff like do flips off of it and everything. Caesar has his bubble attacks, and he has all these different moves he can do, tricks with the string and everything. It was a really good traveling party, but Part 2 kind of brushes Caesar and Lisa to the side really fast.
Yeah,
I mean, Caesar gets the fight in the beginning with Wamu where they both lose. Fight with Wamu where he kind of wins but then dies. And then that's it. I mean, that's all he does. The half fight with Cars, and that's it. And she kills 1 grunt.
He also technically fights... Did you say Joseph? He does fight Joseph in a manner. And he's able to beat him.
Yeah, I guess him and Joseph do have that fight in the beginning.
It's a very much
where he traps Joseph in a bubble.
Yeah, it's
and
more
then
like a
he goes to kiss
fight.
that girl, and the pigeon comes out of her mouth into Caesar's mouth.
Yeah, exactly. That's never not going to be funny.
Thing, but
yeah, it's a good.
Yeah, it would have been great to see it used more, because in Part 1, didn't do jack shit. It was 100% the Jonathan show, but you didn't really have the kind of connection with William Zeppeli that you did with Caesar. And obviously, Speedwagon was just the narrator, whereas Lisa was arguably the strongest character on the heroic side.
He's basically a hype man.
Yeah, he was pretty much the hype man, whereas Lisa was probably the best fighter that their team had. So it sucks to see them not really get to do anything just because, you know, it's the 80s and she's a woman in anime, so she can't do anything.
I think it was...
Or has to do it all.
I think she's able... It's not as bad as a lot of other, old stuff, but at least she's able to show off, the fact that, this is an extremely strong person, but also, this is a very different time, so you can't really show
you gotta have the protagonist do the winning. I think is the first part where, all the party members start contributing just a little bit more.
In Part 3?
Part 2 is very much just the Joseph show. More if Joseph wasn't such a good character.
Yeah, it's true. A lot of the
character, so it's okay.
Yeah, a lot of the reason why Part 2 is able to be kind of... even though it does do the classic shonen trope stuff, it's able to get away just because Joseph is such, a weird-ass shonen protagonist when you think about him, and it's even weirder when you put him in contrast to Jonathan. When he runs away and it says, this is the classic Joestar, thing to do, it's to run away. And you go, I don't think I ever saw Jonathan run away from anything. That's actually not true.
He never ran away.
He never ran away.
Yeah.
Even his dad, as he was dying, did not run away. It's very much he's using...
Yeah, he calls it the Joestar family's ultimate technique, but it's just him doing it.
Yeah, and I think one of the Pillarmen eventually does realize that he's on purpose being extremely silly to lower down the guard of the enemy. I forget if maybe it was
Joseph. So Araki's big thing is that he every JoJo has to be opposite of the one that came before it in some way. Then is the gentleman, honor before reason. He's a kick the shit out of you. And then we switch over to Joseph, who is
American.
Fuck honor. He's he's American. He's not British.
I think
he doesn't give a shit about honor.
Yeah.
He's tricky. He's smart. He's a lot more of a cerebral fighter than Jonathan ever was. Mark line is that he predicts what the next guy is going to say, and then they say it anyway, even though he just said it out loud.
Yeah. Which is great in fighting games when that's one of his special moves, is that all the enemy will be he'll say I forget, I think it was the one for PS3, there's when you fight because there's Dio Brando and then there's Dio, when you fight Part 3 Dio, I think he says the next thing you're gonna say is he'll say out loud Rai at the bottom, and then,
where he goes Ri, and then Dio says it, and then they all go Nani afterwards.
Right afterwards, he basically says all their catchphrases, and it's amazing. But yeah, he does a lot of that where he's able to fuck with them in their mind.
That's a big part of his fighting style as a character, is that he's a very intelligent fighter who wins through his brain more than his brawn, because he's pretty much outgunned of Part 2. All of the Pillarmen are stronger than him, but he manages to pull through with clever tactics, which is fun to watch. It's a lot more fun to me than you you tied me up in this shit. Well, I don't even care. I'm gonna break it and I'm gonna punch my Hamon into your face.
Exactly. If part 1 is John Cena, then part 2 is Eddie Guerrero. Because he's cheating, is stealing his way to fucking victory. All the while, like, doing a cocky move and going like, come on. And you kind of go like, yeah, he's fighting dudes way stronger than him. It's a very much like, I guess if I was in that exact same situation, I would try and win by any means necessary. Like, if I was in the same kind of...
Yeah, I agree.
And that is... what helps part 2 age much better than part 1 ever did.
Part 1 definitely did not age well. It's school, very like
it's
hero versus the ultimate evil and the honorable warrior.
Yeah.
Whereas part 2 feels a little bit more modern. Modern's the right word, but it definitely feels a little bit more like
it was doing something different back then.
Yeah.
Even.
Yeah, for its time it was very different.
And it's very influential to a lot of stuff where even when you think about it, like Street Fighter fucking took 2 characters, basically. You said King of Fighters. Obviously, that's part 3. That's Polnareff. I'm pretty sure Tekken took the volcano, because they saw that part 2
That's very possible.
Ended with a volcano, and then that dude, as a kid, was like, you know what's real awesome? Ending fights at a volcano.
That's very possible.
And I also like the way...
part 2 is very iconic.
Mm-hmm. And he also is able to beat the final boss in, like, maybe one of the most original ways impossible for an anime, where he literally launches his ass into space. And I'm gonna assume he stays there for the remainder of all the JoJo parts. Like, I think I once told my friend when I was reading part 4, it would be really cool if they just did a quick, when they showed Joseph, they should have done a quick cut back to cars in space, like all the years later, and he's like still drifting up in space.
Still frozen in space.
Yeah, basically. Like,
part of part 2 is easily Joseph's attitude, because when Cars is getting shot into space through complete and utter bullshit, because just Joseph is just in his fucking head by that point. Planned all this shit, and Joseph's like, absolutely I did. This was 100% me. I planned this eruption and all these rocks and everything, you fucking idiot. That's completely not true. This is all complete bullshit. Yeah. But I know this will piss him off, so I wanted to do it anyway.
It's a good character moment where they go like, I think it's something that I think more anime should do. And funny enough, I was trying to think of another example of someone doing something similar to that, where they're clearly lying when something didn't go their way, but they are doing it to get inside the person's head. And it was literally Slam Dunk, where like, which is a basketball manga, where there's a part where a basketball hits a player in the face and then it makes a 2-point shot. And then the enemy goes like, they're like so stunned and they go like, ha, that was exactly how I planned it. And then they go, what, really? Like, that's kind of like how his main strategy is to make the opponent think like even the most random minute detail, he planned that shit out. And obviously he did not. Like, Joseph is, he's smart, but he's not that smart, but he's smart enough to know, like, if I make them think I'm actually stronger than I am, then that's good.
He's strong, he's smart, and he's adaptable, which is important. Like, Joseph's very aware of everything that's going on in a fight. Like, when he beats SEDC, and he ties that string for his hat all over the place, and then he manages to tie it off in 2 different sections so that when SEDC cuts the main section, it doesn't actually cut the string because he tied it off in another spot. There's a ton of stuff like that.
Yeah. It's very much a smart fighter, and I think that helps make part 2, like, easily, I think, my favorite part. Having read almost all of it except for the last part, because I'm waiting for it to actually be finished before I actually try reading it
only on Stone Ocean right now, so I've only completely finished all the way through Bento Ario. It is still currently the one that I think is my favorite, just for consistent quality all the way through.
Oh yeah, definitely. And it's funny because I think his character also kind of goes... Like, Joseph is, I think, next to Jotaro, the most character used. Like, he's in at least 3 different parts.
That is correct, yeah.
And it shows that, like, a lot...
Because he's in Battle Tendency, Stardust Crusaders, and Diamond is Unbreakable.
Yeah.
In Stardust Crusaders, Diamond is Unbreakable, and Stone Ocean, and sort of Bento Ario?
Yeah.
All that he's in?
It's sort of. That one, but that one's like a weird edge case, so it's fine. But yeah. Part 2, real good. And
that is Battle Tendency. Do you have anything else that you want to say on the Hamon era of JoJo?
I really like... So this is the part... I think this is the part 1 and part 2 especially. are my favorite in terms of naming conventions, because a lot of their names are, as the more JoJo's go on, the more JoJo's like the names start to make a little bit more sense. But I do like that a lot of part 1 and part 2, it's like Whamu is based off of Wham, SCDC is based off of ACDC. I can't remember Lisa right now, but like even
actually, I think that's an artist's name. It's just Lisa.
Oh, that makes sense. Dio is named after
Cult Jam. That is what she's named after.
Really? Wow.
Lisa and Cult Jam. Awesome.
I also love that Dio is named after Rodney James Dio, the dude who replaced Ozzy Osbourne in Black Sabbath. Like, it is the most random name to give your main evil bad guy, but I love it so much. And in terms of naming conventions, I think part 2 and part 1 are my favorite, just because, like, a lot of them are old classic rock feeling, at least. And then when you get to the other parts, they start to change up a little bit more. I feel like part 3's naming conventions start to get a little bit more all over the place.
Yeah, in parts 3 and 4, they start shifting the actual character name. Well, because now every character is a twofer.
Yeah.
Because starting in part 3, they shift away from Hamon and they begin to put in
stand names.
So stands are basically personas before persona is a thing.
Yeah. It's the reason why personas are what they are.
All the stands kind of get the musical references, whereas the characters actually have like regular people names.
Yeah. And I think it was better. I liked it better when they were character names, because stand names now are like, you have like dudes who are in later parts literally naming their stand like Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, and I'm like, come on. This should have been way easier. I liked it better when he tried to make them actual names and was kind of failing at it at the same time. But yeah, that's, I think, the final thing I really want to say is that the like rock name convention is, I think, best in part 1 and part 2.
I'm not super attached to any of the naming conventions for either part. I think the only thing that me about the later parts is the shift to stands takes a while.
Yeah, it does.
To anything that makes even a little bit, like, even by Hamon standards, stands are kind of ridiculous at first. But as always with Araki, it settles down and kind of evens out, and stuff starts getting better.
Yeah, eventually. There's still some cases of like, God damn it. I also really like the ending theme and the opening themes for part 1 and part 2. If you don't have time to watch part 1, just watch part 1's opening, and you basically get the entire story of part 1.
Yeah, pretty much. The music out as well. It's no longer roundabout.
Yeah. Oh, I should also
walk like an Egyptian.
Yeah, it is, because that heavily influenced Stardust Crusaders. That's very obvious when you watch it. The thing I forgot to mention is the way they use their opening. Like, so when you hit the final episode, the openings start to change. Like in part 1, when it was the final episode, for the opening started including actual like Dio noises throughout it, and
I think all the openings do that for all the parts. Actually,
yeah, once they hit like near the end part, like it's something real cool that I wish kind of a little bit more animes did. But so far, JoJo's the only one that does it, as far as I'm aware.
The intro music kind of evolves to match what's going on.
Exactly.
They do it best in Diamond is Unbreakable, though, because in the first 3 parts, it gets just completely like spoilerific beyond words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is.
Opening for Battle Tendency completely spoils that Caesar dies.
If you're paying super close attention, yeah. But either way,
because Joseph puts his headband on.
That's true.
In the opening.
It's kind of one of those things, I guess they figure, like, if you're new, you're not going to know what that means, but if you're old, you'll be like, oh, I get it. I think that's kind of where the openings are. They try and be like a send-up to people who have been with JoJo for a while, and for people who are new, they won't 100% know what's going on until it's already happened.
Maybe. I know there's a Purple Hermit reference, or Hermit Purple reference in the Part 2 opening, which I didn't get at all because I don't know JoJo.
Yeah.
But I was able to pick out the Caesar death spoiler, despite not seeing it before.
Oh. Well, that's unfortunate. But
it's pretty obvious that Caesar wore that headband, and then in the opening, JoJo puts it on and screams to the sky. So I was like, alright, Caesar's totally fucking gonna die, because he's wearing his headband and screaming into the sky.
Yeah. Hopefully they don't do that as often, where they spoil.
Diamond is Unbreakable, they make a point not to do it.
Yeah, that's good.
Like they
especially
actually
'cause-
literally add like a couple characters and drawings in like from one episode to the next for each opening. It's really cool.
Okay, good, because Diamond is Unbreakable. His entire thing is how it's a mystery, and if you're not able to like solve it, if you solve it just by looking at the opening, that'd be very unfortunate. Yeah,
His Unbreakable is literally Persona 4, so
it is. I think that's all I gotta say. I like it when animes do different openings. There was a show I watched that I haven't caught up with because I haven't had time to watch the new season, called Durarara, that had like literally like 50 characters in it. So every time like, and it would always change the protagonist's view every time the new like thing would show up. So what they would do is that at the beginning of every opening, they would do this thing like halfway into the opening, the music, like the person would stop singing, but then they would do like a quick like cut back to things you would need to know for this episode that happened in previous ones. And then so then like there'd be like a quick like so it'd go like the music would like enter an instrumental, and then they go like, oh, this happened and this happened, and then like a character would go, and then this will happen, and then they like immediately cut back right into the song. Like it was the coolest fucking thing I've ever seen. And I watched that opening every single time just to see like how do they transition back into the music this time. It also helped because you needed to see it to know what the hell was going on. But yeah,
that is a little bit better spoiler wise, I think.
yeah, that's a little bit better. But yeah, I think that's it. So
That's all I've got for the first two parts.
So let me tell you what's coming up in your next coming attractions. We've got JoJo Part 3 and 4. This one was already pretty
So
long.
if you want to watch along with us, make sure you watch Stardust Crusaders and Diamond is Unbreakable. You
got
will
nothing.
probably not finish both in a week because they're long as shit, but then again, maybe you will because like 90% of what our Twitter audience does. So
That's true. And then after that, we have a very special thing planned where Zenrat has requested that my brother and sister join us.
Oh, that's right. I had forgotten about that. Yeah.
You've forgotten about that, but I never forget. So I'm figuring out the perfect movie to watch.
Wokey never forgets.
Awoken, always remember that. I once waited 4 years to do a completely like a bit I did once when I said something once 4 years ago, and then 4 years passed, and I dropped that thing on that same person. They were like, "I hate you so much for doing this." And I was like, "I never forget. Never underestimate how far I will go for a joke."
That works for me. Yeah. So, what we're gonna watch with the family Wokey.
I don't know. I'll figure out something. I also think that entire recording is going to be a shit show, but we'll see. I also have to figure out a good way for them to be able to hear you, but we'll figure it out. Maybe my sister will be at her computer and my brother will join us in my room. So that'll be fun. And I'll make sure to pick a very fun movie for all of us to have to see in my giant catalog of movies I've seen that I would like to see again with more people. And yeah, I think that's it.
All right. Well, yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
So thank you guys for watching yet another episode, and we will see you next week.
And always remember to support your local concession stand.
打ちつける鼓動を明かし友の声